Bishop's Grade, Oregon, 1888. Cormac Doan fed 40 strangers a day and had not eaten a meal with another person in 6 years. He was 36 years old, and he kept the stage station at the top of the grade on the road between Baker City and Grande, which meant he kept 11 horses, a barn, a well, a long room with 2 tables in it, and a reputation for the worst food in eastern Oregon. This was not a matter of dispute. Drivers warned passengers about it at Baker City. There was a story that a man had once asked Cormac Doan what was in the stew, and Cormac Doan had thought about it honestly for some time, and then said he could not swear to all of it. He knew he was a bad cook. He had been trying to stop being one for 6 years and had made no progress whatever. Everything else at Bishop's Grade was exact. The horses were the best kept on that division, and the company knew it. The harness was oiled, the well was sweet, the barn was swept every morning at 5, and the water heated by 1/2 past, and in 6 years the westbound had never once waited on a team at that station. He slept in a room off the kitchen, and he ate standing up at the counter after everyone had gone, out of whatever pot was nearest, and he had done that so long he had stopped noticing that it was a way to eat. On the 9th of August, the eastbound came up the grade at 2 in the afternoon with 9 passengers, and 8 of them got down for the 20-minute stop. And the 9th one got down with a carpet bag and did not get back on. Cormac was at the near-wheeler's head with a bucket when Abner Roche came over. "Cormac, that one's not going on." "Where's she going?" "That's the difficulty," Abner said. "She's paid to Grande, but she's asking about work here, and I told her the only work at Bishop's Grade is the kind you'd have to be desperate to want, and she said that was all right then." She was standing by the door of the long room with the bag at her feet, and she was 27 or so, small, straight-backed, in a plain, dark blue dress gone pale at the elbows with a white collar sewn on by hand, and her dark hair was pinned up under a straw hat that had been through weather. She had a way of standing that was very still. Cormac had seen a good deal of people getting off stages, and he had never seen anybody stand that still. "Ma'am, are you the keeper?" "I am." Cormac Doan. Honora Culhane. She had an accent off the west of Ireland that 11 years in America had not much softened. "Mr. Doan, I'll not waste your afternoon. I can cook and I can mend. Ma'am, I can cook for 40. I cooked for a house of 19 in Portland for 14 months, and before that a hotel kitchen in Astoria, and before that a farm in County Clare where there was nothing to cook with at all, which is where you learn it properly." She said it evenly, in order like a person who had practiced it against the possibility of being interrupted. "And I can mend. Shirts, harness canvas, ticking, anything with a seam. I've no letter to show you, and I'll tell you plainly there's a reason for that, and I'd rather tell you the reason after you've tasted the cooking than before." Cormac Doan stood in the yard with a bucket in his hand. Behind him, at the long tables, 8 passengers were eating what he had put in front of them, and he could hear exactly how they were eating it. "I was hoping you could stay for supper too," he said. Honora Culhane looked at him. "I've said I'll cook it. I know what you said." He set the bucket down. "I mean, sit at the table and eat it. There's a chair at the head of the near table that nobody sat in since I took this station, and that's the one I mean." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Ma'am, I'm not saying it well. The company allows me a cook, and the company's notion is the cook eats in the kitchen after, standing, off the pot. I've eaten off that pot standing up for 6 years, and I know exactly what it does to a person, and I'm not putting another soul on it." If you cook here, you eat at the table with the rest, and it's not a kindness, that's the terms. There was a silence in that yard. You'd have me at the table, Honora said. I would, with the passengers. Ma'am, this is a stage station on a mountain. The passengers can arrange themselves however they like. She picked up the carpet bag. Then I'll want it written, she said. He wrote it at the end of the long table that evening with a pen and the station ink, 5 terms, and when he pushed the paper across, she did not pick it up. Read it to me, Honora said. He read it. Wages of $18 a month found, which was $2 over what the company allowed, and he did not mention that. The kitchen and the pantry and the ordering hers. And he would not interfere with any of it. A room to herself with a bolt. A seat at the head of the near table at every meal served in that house. And the 5th, which she made him read twice that she might leave at any hour of any day for any reason, or none, and no explanation owed to him or to anybody. Again, she said. He read the 5th one a 3rd time. Now write under it that you read it to me aloud on the 9th of August, and put your name. Cormac Doan wrote that under it, and put his name, and it was only when he had blotted it that he understood, and he was careful not to look up while he understood it. Mr. Doan, ma'am, you'll not make anything of it. No, ma'am, he said. There's nothing to make. I've a man works this station, can't tell you which end of a paper is the top, and he's the best hostler on the division. Paper's a trick, is all it is. Some are taught it, and some are not. Honora Culhane took the pen out of his hand, awkwardly the way a person holds a tool they have not been shown, and made her mark at the bottom, and he witnessed it. Then she went into the kitchen and looked at it for 11 minutes without saying a word, and came out and asked him what in the name of God he had been doing to the flour. The supper that night was mutton with onions and a barley soup and soda bread, and there were only 4 passengers to eat it, and one of them, a drummer out of Boise who had come over that grade 9 times. Put his spoon down and looked up and said, Doan, who died and left you a cook? Cormac Doan sat at the head of the near table with Honora Culhane in the chair to his right and did not answer, because he was eating, sitting down in company for the first time since 1882, and he did not entirely trust his voice. What a stage station actually was is a thing worth understanding, because it explains the whole of Cormac Doan's life and most of what happened next. The company that held the mail contract over the Blue Mountains ran a coach each way daily in the open season, and a coach is not a thing you can run on affection. It runs on teams standing ready at fixed distances, and a station keeper's entire purpose in the world is that when the coach comes over the rise. There are 4 fresh horses in harness in the yard, and nobody has to wait. 12 miles between stations on the grade, because that is as far as a team pulls a loaded Concord uphill without ruining. 11 head at Bishop's grade, 4 working, 4 resting, 2 spare, and 1 old mare who had been retired by everybody except herself. Grain hauled up from Baker City by the ton. Water from a well that had been dug in 1871 by men who had guessed right, which was not a thing everybody on that road could say. And because the passengers had to eat somewhere, the company paid the keeper a meal allowance and expected him to be a cook as well, which is roughly as sensible as expecting a farrier to sing. Most of them were bad at it. Cormac Doan was famous for it. The news went down the grade the way news does on a stage road, which is to say faster than the stage. By the third week of August, there were teamsters coming 11 miles out of their way to eat at Bishop's Grade. By September, the company had begun holding the eastbound the full 30 minutes instead of 20, and the division superintendent came up in a buggy to see what was happening, and stayed to dinner and wrote something in a notebook. Honora ran that kitchen the way Cormac ran that barn, which is to say exactly, and the two of them discovered inside a fortnight that they were the same kind of person, and that neither of them had ever met another one. She mended in the evenings. She sat at the end of the long table with the lamp pulled close and worked through a basket that never emptied. And Cormac would come in from the barn at 9 and sit at the other end of the table with the station ledger and the day's waybills, and for an hour there would be no sound in that room at all but the fire and a needle and a pen. It was, he thought afterward, the best hour of any day of his life to that point, and neither of them said one word during any of it for 11 weeks. She would not go into Baker City. He noticed it in September when the ordering wanted doing and she wrote out a list. She could not write it, so she said it and he wrote it, and he offered to take her down, and she said no. He offered again in October when the winter goods came in, and she said no again in exactly the same voice, and on the 4th of November, when a man in a good gray overcoat got out of the westbound at Bishop's Grade and stood in the yard looking at the long room without going into it, Cormac Doan finally understood that the no was not about Baker City at all. The man did not come in. He stood in that yard for the whole 20 minutes with his gloves in his hand, looking at the windows of the long room where a woman was working in a kitchen he could not see into, and then he got back on the westbound and went down the grade. Cormac walked over to Abner Roche. Who was that? Him? Abner spat. Vane, Thaddeus Vane, runs an immigrant agency out of Portland, passages, situations, that class of business. He's been up and down this road 4 times since August. Doing what? Doan, said Abner Roche. I drive a stage. I don't ask a paying man his business. He climbed up on the box. But he rode the whole way from Baker City reading a paper, and he asked me twice how many was working at this station. The receipt book started on the 11th of November, and it started by accident. Honora had made a thing that night, with mutton and dried apples and a great deal of pepper, that 4 teamsters had eaten in complete silence and then asked about, and one of them wanted it written down for his wife at Union, and Honora said she could not write it, and the teamster looked embarrassed and let it go. Cormac Doan went into the kitchen after everyone had gone. Say it to me. Say what to you? The apple thing. Say it, and I'll put it down. He had the station pen and a blank ledger out of the company stores, a good one, ruled, that he was going to have to account for. Not for him, for the house. There's 40 a day come over this grade, and half of them ask. And I'd sooner have it in a book than in your head, because your head is going to leave here one day under Term 5, and I'd like the apple thing to stay. Honora Culhane stood with a cloth in her hands. That's the queerest thing anybody's said to me in America, she said. It's late, and I've been in the barn. Sit down then. So she said it, and he wrote it, and it took an hour and 10 minutes, because she did not know it in quantities. She knew it in handfuls and in how the thing looked when it was right, and he kept stopping her and making her put a number on it, and she kept telling him a number was no use, and by the end of it there was a page in that ledger-headed mutton A&D apples, Honora Culhane. 11th November, with 2 crossings out and a note at the bottom in Cormac's square hand. She says the pepper is not a suggestion. She read it over his shoulder. Or she looked at it and did not read it, and he saw her do that. That word, she said, and put her finger on it. Pepper and that. Mutton, show me which is which again. That was how it began, and it went on all winter, one page at a time. She got as far as her own name on the 21st of November, and it took her 40 minutes, and she would not let him help with the last 3 letters. Honora, she read. H, and that's the sound of it. And then, is that the same one twice? The O's the same one twice. Then why is it not the same size? Ma'am, I've been asking that about paper my whole life, and there's no answer in it. Culhane, she put her finger under it. That's my father's name, and I've never once seen it before. Cormac Doan sat at the other end of the table with the waybills and did not look up, because there are moments a man has no business watching. The snow came on the 22nd of November, and it came the way it comes on the Blue Mountains, without much warning and with a great deal of intent, and by the 26th the grade was shut. The company suspended the run to La Grande on the 28th. There would be no stage over Bishop's Grade until the road opened, which in a good year was the first week of March. There were 4 people wintered in at that station: Cormac Doan, Honora Culhane, Jubal Nance the hostler, and 11 horses. You'll want to understand what this is, Cormac said. The first night the road was shut. There's nobody coming up. There's nobody going down. If a thing happens here in January, there is not one living soul that can get to us, and we cannot get to them. Term 5 says you can leave any hour of any day, and I'm telling you honestly that from about Thursday, that term is a piece of paper and nothing else until March. Honora Culhane was banking the fire. Mr. Doan, she said, there's a thing I should tell you, and I'd as well tell it now, since you've told me nobody can come up the road. You needn't. I'd rather. You've read me a paper aloud and put your name on it, and you've never once asked. She sat down at the end of the long table. Do you know what a prepaid passage is? I know what it sounds like. There's agencies in the cities that pay a person's passage from Ireland or Sweden or wherever it may be and find them a situation the other end, and the person works off what was advanced. It's a legitimate trade, and there's honest men in it. She smoothed her hands on her apron. In 1877, a man of that trade came into our parish in Clare with a book of situations in Boston, and my father put me on a list, and I was on a ship out of Queenstown that October, and I have been working off $84 for 11 years. Cormac Doan sat very still. 11 years. 3 per centum the month, and charges. There's always charges. There's a charge for the situation, and a charge for finding the next one when the first goes bad, and there's a charge for the letter he writes to tell you what you owe. She said all of it in the flattest voice imaginable. I've paid Thaddeus Vane's agency out of my wages in Boston and in Astoria and in Portland, and I have never in 11 years seen the sum go down. And I cannot read the accounting he sends me, and every place I've worked has had a housekeeper or a mistress who read it out to me and told me it was correct. Was it correct? How would I know? Honora said. That's the whole of it, Mr. Doan. That's the whole entire thing. I have been 11 years in a country where the only paper I have ever been shown was held by the man it belonged to. The fire went on doing what fires do. Why'd you leave Portland? Because in June, the man of the house began coming into the kitchen. At times he'd no business in a kitchen. And I told the housekeeper. And the housekeeper believed me and could do nothing at all, and she gave me $4 of her own money and told me to go east on the cars and not tell her where. Honora's chin came up. And Mr. Vane's agency has my note, and the note says, I'm bound to the situation until it's cleared, and there's a paper he can go to a court with. I've run from it since June. He's been up this road 4 times. Cormac Doan got up and went to the window and looked at the snow going past it sideways. "Ma'am," he said, "I want to say a thing badly, and I'm going to say it plain instead. There's nobody coming up this road until March. Whatever he means to do, he cannot do it before the thaw. So you've got a winter, and you've got a room with a bolt on it, and you've got a chair at that table, and I'd take it kindly if you'd sit in it." That was all he said about it, and he did not mention it again for 91 days. What he did instead was write letters, and put them in the mailbox for the first stage in March, which was a thing that made no sense at all to Jubal Nance, who watched him do it 4 times between December and February and never said anything. Because Jubal Nance had worked for Cormac Doan for 6 years and had never once known him to do a thing for no reason. And every evening, at the end of the long table, with the lamp pulled close and the wind on the roof, they did a page of the receipt book. That was the winter. 2 people and a hostler and 11 horses, and outside a great deal of snow. And inside a ledger, filling up 1 page at a time in a square, careful hand, soda bread, barley soup, the apple thing, a way of doing potatoes that her mother had off a woman in Ennistimon, and beside each page, in the margin, the same 4 or 5 words written out again and again in a bigger hand, and a woman's finger following them. She learned her letters off a receipt book because it was the only book in that house she already knew by heart. She knew what the page said. She had said it herself. All she was doing was matching a sound she owned to a shape she did not, and Cormac Doan, who had never taught anybody anything in his life, worked that out in the second week of December entirely by accident, and then never told her that it was clever, because he did not want her thinking about the method instead of the words. By Christmas, she could read her own name and his and the word pepper. By the middle of January, she could read a whole page slowly out loud with her finger under it, and she did, one night, the mutton and apples, all of it, the crossings out, and the note at the bottom, and when she got to, she says, the pepper is not a suggestion, she stopped and looked up and said, "You wrote that in November." "I did." "You wrote a joke in a book for me to find in January." "Ma'am, in November I did not know you were going to find it." Honora Culhane closed the receipt book and put both hands flat on it. "Cormac," she said. It was the first time. He looked at the fire and did not say a thing. There was a bad stretch in the middle of January. She stopped at the word situation, which was on page 41 because it was in the note about where the potatoes came from. And she could not get it, and she tried it 11 or 12 times and then shut the book and stood up and said she was tired. She was not tired. She did not come out of the kitchen for the whole of the next evening. On the 3rd night, Cormac Doan sat down at the end of the long table and opened the receipt book to page 1 and pushed it across. "Read me the first one." "I'll not." "Honora, read me the first one." So she read page 1, mutton and apples, the 11th of November, all of it, without a single stop, in about 90 seconds. "Now," Cormac said, "in November that page took you an hour and 10 minutes to say, and you couldn't get a number out of your head onto it, and tonight you read the whole thing off the page faster than I could write my own name. There's 41 pages between those 2 things, and you have done every one of them." He shut the book. The word situation is a bad word, and I've a dislike of it myself. We'll leave it out and put it back in March. You'd leave a word out of a book. "It's my book," Cormac said. "I'll leave out what I like." In February, The wind took 40 feet of shakes off the north side of the barn roof in one night, and the two of them and Jubal Nance spent 11 days getting it closed in weather that had no business being worked in, and on the 9th day, Honora Culhane came down off that roof with her hand split open and sat on the chopping block and laughed until she cried, and could not tell either of them why, and Cormac Doan stood in the snow holding a hammer and understood that he was going to have to. Say something before March. The road opened on the 2nd of March. The first stage up the grade was the 4th, and it brought the mail, and in the mail were 4 letters for Cormac Doan. He did not open them in the yard. He carried them into the long room and put them on the table in front of her and sat down. Honora, in December, I wrote 4 letters, and I put them in that box for the first stage out, and I never told you, and I'm going to tell you why before you see what's in them. He turned his hat over once. You said a thing in November that I could not get out of my head. You said you'd been 11 years in a country where the only paper you'd ever been shown was held by the man it belonged to. I remember saying it. There's a thing about a debt that a man in a business like that depends on you not knowing, Cormac said. A debt is not what the man holding it says it is. It's an arithmetic, and an arithmetic has 2 ends, and the man holding it only ever shows you the one. So I did not write to Mr. Vane at all. I wrote to everybody else. He opened the first letter. It was from the office of the Pacific Mail Agency at San Francisco, and it enclosed a certified extract of the passenger list of the steamer that had carried her from Queenstown in October 1877, and the certified tariff for the crossing. Honora Culhane, spinster, of the parish of Kilmurray, County Clare, steerage, prepaid, agency group rate, $31.50. $31.50, she said. The note says 84 advanced for passage and outfitting. Your passage was $31.50, and the agency got a group rate on it, and that is a certified figure out of a shipping company's own books that Thaddeus Vane cannot touch. He opened the second. It was from the household in Portland, and it was written by a woman named Winifred Nagel, who had been the cook in that house for 19 years, and who had kept in the back of her own market book every deduction taken out of every servant's wages in that establishment since 1881, because, as she explained at some length, she had never in her life trusted the agency and had told the mistress so. She wrote 14 months of it out for me, Cormac said. $12 a month, taken out of your wages at the top before you ever saw them, paid over to the Vane agency. $168. And she says she can swear to every figure and produce the book. Honora Culhane had both hands over her mouth. There's 2 more, Cormac said. The third's from the hotel at Astoria, which kept a wage book 9 months at $8. 72 more. And the 4th is from a lawyer in Baker City named Prosper Kell, and I'm not going to read you the whole of it, but the short of it is this. $31.50 was advanced. $240 has been collected against it out of your wages in 3 states. And Mr. Kell says that a note where the sum advanced was overstated by $52.50 at the start, and where the holder has collected better than 7 times the money he laid out and gone on sending you a bill in a language you cannot read, he is not a debt he would care to take into a courtroom in this state on the collecting side. The room was very quiet. You did all that in December, Honora said. I did it in December because the road was shut and there was nothing else I could do for you, Cormac said. And I did not tell you for 91 days because every single one of those letters could have come back nothing. And I was not going to sit at this table all winter watching you wait on the post. 91 days. I counted them. It's a failing. Honora Culhane picked up the certified extract with the shipping company's seal on it and turned it to the light and read it. Slowly, with her finger under the line, out loud, the whole of it, her own name and her own parish and $31.50 in a room at the top of a mountain in Oregon in March in her own voice. Then she put it down and looked at Cormac Doan. "You taught me to read a receipt book," she said, "so that the first paper anybody ever showed me in this country that was mine, I could read myself." That's not why I did it. I know it isn't. That's the whole reason it counts. "There's one more thing in the Baker City letter," Cormac said, "and I'd rather you heard it from me than found it. Mr. Kell says a note of that kind is generally sold on. A man in that trade doesn't hold 11 years of paper out of Christian patience. He holds it because it's an asset and he means to realize it, and the way you realize a labor note is you find the person and stand them in front of somebody with a badge and hope they don't know what's in their own file. He's coming up here. He's been up 4 times since August and never once come inside, and I could not work out why," Cormac said. "I can now. He wasn't looking for you. He was making sure you were still here before he spent money on a constable." Honora Culhane put the shipping extract down flat on the table. "Then I'll be here," she said. "I'll be at that table when he comes, and I'll not be in the kitchen. And I want the ledger on the table and every one of those 4 letters under my hand. Cormac, for 11 years, that man has been the only person in the room who knew what the paper said. I'd like one afternoon of the other way about." Thaddeus Vane came up the grade on the 18th of March with a Baker City constable and a copy of the note. He was a courteous man of 44 in a good gray overcoat, and he came into the long room with his hat off and was pleasant to everybody, and he said that he regretted the necessity extremely that Miss Culhane had left a situation in breach of an agreement freely entered into, that the agency had carried her for 11 years out of nothing but Christian patience, and that he had no wish whatever to be unpleasant if the matter could be settled between reasonable people. Honora Culhane came out of the kitchen with a folder of papers. She did not hand them to Vane. She handed them to the constable, and she said, "Sir, would you read the top one out loud, please, so that there's no confusion about the figure?" The constable read out $31.50. Then she handed him the Portland book and the Astoria wage sheet and the letter from Prosper Kell, and she stood in the middle of that long room while a Baker City constable did arithmetic out loud in front of Cormac Doan, Jubal Nance, Abner Roche, 4 teamsters, and the division superintendent of the stage company, who had come up that morning for reasons of his own and had elected to stay. And the thing that finished Thaddeus Vane was not the constable, who had no authority to do anything at all except decline to arrest anybody, and it was not the district court at Baker City in May, which vacated the note and referred the accounting to the district attorney. The thing that finished him was that the division superintendent of a stage company was standing in that room, and a stage company employs a great many people who came over on prepaid passages, and by the 1st of June there was not an agent of the Vane Emigrant Agency permitted on any coach on that division. He wound up the agency in Portland in August 1889 and went to San Francisco. Prosper Kell, who did the accounting for the court, found 11 other notes in the same condition, and wrote to every one of the 11. The roads stayed open, and the stages came up, and the grade turned green in April the way that country does, all at once and violently, and the receipt book by then was 91 pages long. Cormac Doan said the thing on the 4th of May, at the end of the long table, badly, at 9 o'clock at night with the ledger open in front of him. "Term 5, he said. "I know Term 5. You can leave any hour of any day for any reason or none and no explanation owed, and that stands, and it'll stand as long as I'm above ground." He turned the pen over in his fingers. "Honora, I have been keeping a book of your recipes since November, and I have written 91 pages of it, and there's not one word in the whole ledger about me. And I've worked out why, and it's because a man who writes down a thing has got it. And I have been getting hold of you a page at a time for 6 months, rather than say one honest sentence out loud. Say the sentence. I don't want you to cook here." He looked up. "I want you to eat here. That's the sentence. I've a station with a chair at the head of a table that nobody sat in for 6 years, and I put you in it the first hour I met you, and I have not eaten one meal alone since. And I would rather feed 40 strangers a day for the rest of my life with you in that chair than have any other thing I can think of." Honora Culhane took the pen out of his hand. She turned to the 92nd page of the receipt book and wrote slowly in a large, uncertain hand, with her tongue between her teeth, 4 words. Then she turned it round and pushed it across the table so he could read it, which was, she said afterwards, the entire point. It said, "Cormac Doan, 11th November. "That's the date you started the book," she said. "That's the answer. Ask me again and I'll write it longer, but I've only the 4 words tonight, and I've been 3 weeks at them." They were married at Baker City on the 22nd of June, 1889. Winifred Nagel came up from Portland on the cars and the coach and stood up with her, 61 years old, with the market book in her bag because she would not leave it anywhere. Jubal Nance stood up with him. Abner Roche drove them and would not take the fare and was very rude about being thanked. Honora Doan ran that kitchen for 31 years. The station stopped being a place people warned each other about and became a place people planned a journey around, and in 1896 the company built a second long room onto the north side of it. And Cormac Doan kept the barn exactly the way he had always kept it, and the westbound never waited on a team at Bishop's Grade. The receipt book ran to 4 volumes. The first one is the one that matters, because the first one has the crossings out in it, and a note at the bottom of page 1 in a square, careful hand, and 91 pages of a woman's own words written down by somebody else, and then, on page 92, 4 words in her own. Cormac Doan fed 40 strangers a day and had not eaten a meal with another person in 6 years. And then a woman got off the eastbound at 2 in the afternoon with a carpet bag and told him she could cook and she could mend, and he heard himself ask her to stay for supper. He did not plan one thing that came after. He simply made a series of small decisions, none of them remarkable on its own, that added up to the whole of a life. He decided to put her at the head of the table instead of the kitchen in front of the passengers on the first day, because he knew what 6 years of eating standing up does to a person. He decided when she asked him to read a paper out loud to write under it that he had read it to her and sign his name and never once make anything of it. He decided in November to start writing down her recipes because she said she could not write them, and to keep writing them for 91 pages while she learned her letters off her own words, and to never once tell her that this was what was happening. And in December, with the road shut and nobody able to come up or go down, he decided not to write to the man who held her note. He wrote to a shipping company and a cook in Portland and a hotel in Astoria and a lawyer in Baker City, because a debt is an arithmetic with two ends, and in 11 years nobody had ever shown her both of them. He never said he loved her until May. He did not have it in him. He just wrote her own words down, one page at a time, until she could read them. The cruelest thing you can do to a person is hold the only paper with their name on it. The kindest is to teach them the letters and hand it over. May God bless each and every one of you who listened today. Until next time, keep writing.